team from looking into political figure one. Let me clarify that during that investigation, political figure one was a pseudonym agreed upon by the investigative team, the FBI, the DOJ, and IRS investigator. Political figure one is not a pseudonym created by Republicans or Democrats. Political figure one is President Biden, is Joe Biden. Leslie Wolf, as a priority, someone needs to redraft Attachment B. There should be nothing about political figure one in here. This is a response to an email delivered by Joshua Wilson, FBI agent, that said, please see the attached draft for a Blue Star search warrant. Blue Star Strategies is a longtime Democrat lobbying firm that Hunter Biden used to put pressure on U.S. government officials to end the investigation and protect Burisma. The Department of Justice was investigating Blue Star for these activities and allowed to retroactively register as a foreign agent. Today, no one has been held accountable at Blue Star. That happened during 2020, just months before your presidential election, America. You should be very concerned about this. Mr. Turley, based upon the constitutional parameters of the House of Representatives, do you agree that our Oversight Committee, Judiciary Committee, and Ways and Means Committee should be judiciously investigating reasonable suspicion of impeachable actions by President Joe Biden?
I do. I think it is your duty to get answers to these questions and to see if the president was involved in what I think is a confirmed corrupt influence peddling effort.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired. I yield.
Chair now recognize Mr. Garcia from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to just begin by recapping for the American people what we've seen so far today. My Democratic colleagues have done a great job of showing that there's absolutely zero evidence linking President Joe Biden to any wrongdoing. Zero, none. This hearing is a complete waste of time 2 days before a MAGA government shutdown. And we also know that Hunter Biden never held any sort of public office. And there is no evidence that he ever influenced any kind of policy in the White House. There's no evidence that he and his father's finances were ever linked. And we've spoken to many witnesses to prove that. And in fact, none of the witnesses here actually have any direct evidence that there's any sort of wrongdoing, and that was repeated here by these witnesses. So instead, we're back to falling on MAGA conspiracy theories that Rudy Giuliani parroted over and over again. This farce is all about House Republicans trying to re-elect their beloved leader, Donald Trump. And what I want to know is why we're not actually investigating real family corruption. They want to attack President Biden's family, who actually never worked in the White House, which is incredibly hypocritical. Yet we have not yet talked about these guys that actually worked in the White House. And in fact, I want to talk about Jared Kushner, who's right over here. We know that Jared Kushner, who's Donald Trump's son-in-law, was given enormous power in the White House. When Jared joined the White House, he was so unfit and unqualified and with so many conflicts of interest, he couldn't even get a security clearance. His father-in-law, Donald Trump, had to intervene, overriding national security officials. We also know that just months after Jared left the White House, the Saudi royal family gave him $2 billion, with a B, into the Kushner hedge fund. And right now, Jared is pocketing an additional $25 million a year in fees. This is a man who was put at the head of Middle East policy in the White House. We know he personally intervened to give the Saudis a $110 billion arms deal that was opposed by folks all across the government. He supported the Saudis with their brutal war in Yemen, even after they murdered Jamal Khashoggi, a journalist, of course, who was an American resident. The Saudi crown prince bragged to other heads of state that Kushner, and I quote, was in his pocket. Even Trump's first Secretary of State complained that this is inappropriate. Now, Jared delivered for the Saudis over and over again, and he was rewarded. Even advisors to the crown prince advised against the $2 billion hedge fund investment, yet he went forward anyways. So we know that Jared Kushner, a senior White House aide and Donald Trump's son-in-law, was doing favors for a foreign government. Now, this is actually an enormous family scandal that this committee should be investigating. And I think Chris Christie put it well when he said that the grift from this family, the Trump crime family, in my opinion, is breathtaking. You also need to take my word for it. But this is actually what our committee chairman actually said about the Kushners. I'm just quoting our chairman. I have been vocal that I think what Kushner did crossed the line of ethics. Now, Mr. Chairman, I completely agree that the Kushners crossed the line of ethics, and I want to know what we're going to do about it and when that hearing is actually going to be here in front of us. See, if we're not too busy, maybe next week during the Republican MAGA shutdown, we can actually have a hearing with Jared Kushner, which is clearly in a very corrupt arms deal here, a deal around his investment firm. And the chairman can also be involved in that since he also thinks there's problems. Now, we do know today that we're not here because of any wrongdoing of President Biden, but because this is all part of Donald Trump's campaign. And his most extreme allies, including some members of this committee, are now retaliating. In fact, some members have been trying to impeach the president since day one. Now, this is a tweet here. I'm going to read it. It says, 2 years ago, I introduced articles to impeach Joe Biden on his first full day in office. We will impeach Biden, bolded with an exclamation point, and you see the actual resolution here. So we have the receipts to prove it. There really is no reason why. They don't care why they want to impeach the president, but they've been trying to do it now for years. Here you have, of course, a member of this oversight committee posting about introducing articles of impeachment on President Biden's very first day in office. And now the Speaker of the House is empowering these people in a desperate attempt to keep his job. Ultimately, the person pulling the strings here is Donald Trump, a dangerous man facing federal and state indictments who's out for revenge. And he's been doing this his whole career. And I want to show you a second tweet, again by a member of this committee. They're trying to expunge Donald Trump's impeachment, as you can see here, which is also unconstitutional. I'm going to read this tweet. Expunge the wrongful Trump impeachments. Impeach criminal Biden. These are political stunts to appeal to an extremist base, and they seize control of this conference. If we don't act, they'll threaten our democracy again. This impeachment is a farce with no evidence, and with that, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman?
Chair recognizes.
Mr. Chairman, I would just
Mr.
add to the
Jordan.
gentleman's remarks that Jared Kushner was a key player in the historic Abraham
Is this a point of
Accord.
order?
Time is excuse
me. Is this a point of order?
Chair now recognizes Mr. Sessions from Texas for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Gerhardt, you had been asked a question earlier that I heard a quick reply to, and the question was about the timing of a government shutdown and an impeachment. You quickly responded, never. Do you want to revise or extend that remark about the timing of a government shutdown and an impeachment occurring at about the same time? And you said never.
I understand the question, and if you're talking about 2019,
I am.
there was not a shutdown.
There was not. There's not now.
I understand, but
There's not now. So the people on this side are simply taking advantage of your answer. In fact, the indictment, the impeachment of Donald Trump was December 18th, 2019, and then the president signed the funding of the government December 21st, 2019, 3 days later. So the question that you were asked, perhaps you responded to correctly, never. But in fact, there is a nexus that suggests that people on this side of the dais are taken the wrong way. Second, Mr. Chairman, I also find that some of our members are talking about baseless accusations of a government shutdown. All you have to do is go to Google, Ohio, to apply it for WIC, which was the supposition brought up, can be gathered in all 88 Ohio counties. It is run by the state of Ohio, not the federal government. I think that we need to be careful when we make accusations here. Thank you very much. Ms. O'Connor, you have a history of understanding tax implications and inside the Department of Justice. These are serious matters, and when they do—
Would you yield to the gentleman?
I will
Gentlewoman
not.
from Ohio?
I will not.
Just there, okay.
The implications of this endeavor that we are attempting to understand is decision-making inside the Department of Justice. And that inside the decision-making, we've already heard back a number of times how the Department of Justice did not move forward in compliance, I believe, to their job to make a determination whether the facts would or should be taken further. With President Clinton, the FBI went and actually interviewed the president and the vice president about these matters and other people in the White House, and President Clinton lost his law license over that, and it ended up that there was an impeachment from the House side. Can you please talk about what should be done from normal and regular Department of Justice officials to see whether this has occurred and whether we are entitled to ask questions about that investigation from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the DOJ?
Thank you, Mr. Sessions. I think you're more than entitled. I think that you're obligated to look into the allegations that the whistleblowers have brought. The whistleblowers were very detailed in the investigative steps that they took, in those that they wanted to take but were prevented from taking, but would have taken in any other investigation. We don't have a window into where the roadblock was thrown. We don't know who threw it.
Would you think it would be proper for this committee to bring those individuals and to properly vet them about that? Or is that the duty of the Department of Justice through the Federal Bureau of Investigation to get that done?
Well, I think it's your obligation. We know that the whistleblowers tried to remedy the obstruction from within the Internal Revenue Service and got no backup at all. They were left out to dry.
Does that include asking for metadata that might have supported any other investigation like this?
Absolutely. For example, the WhatsApp message where Hunter Biden says that he's sitting next to his father and is in the process of shaking down a Chinese businessman. The agents wanted to find out whether that was a true statement, and they could have found out, but they were denied the authority to pursue that inquiry.
By what authority?
We don't know exactly. All we know from the testimony is that they would request search warrants. They would
So,
be
Mr.
told,
Chairman, let the record reflect this as an inquiry for us to make a determination. Mr. Chairman, I'd also
Absolutely.
ask unanimous
Without objection,
consent
so ordered.
Placed into the record the articles which I had previously provided to this committee in testimony.
Mr. Chairman,
Without objection,
another
so ordered.
unanimous consent motion. I'd like to offer a press release from the same Southern District of New York that you introduced for Lev Parnas that's entitled, Devin Archer sentenced to a year and a day in prison for the fraudulent issuance and sale of more than $60 million of bonds.
Devin Archer, Hunter Biden's business partner and best friend.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Without objection,
your star
so ordered.
witness. Yes,
Chair-
your star witness.
Chair recognizes Mr. Gomez from California for 5 minutes.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. So one of the things I want to kind of stress is that from the very beginning of this Congress, the Republicans had one thing in mind. Let's get Joe Biden, right? Let's get Joe Biden and let's find the evidence that showed he did something wrong. But when the evidence didn't exist, they would make up facts or they would exaggerate to an extent that it was like, honestly, mind-boggling. And I want to focus on one part first. The Republicans keep pointing out 20 shell companies of the Biden family. These are actually 20 shell companies of Hunter Biden. Okay, so anytime they say the Biden family, they're really saying Hunter Biden, because there hasn't been a connection between Joe Biden and these companies. To an extent, do we have the slides up? First slide is, that's not the slide, but I'll show it. So there's an article from Washington Post, August 17, 2023, and it says, how Republicans overhype the findings of the Hunter Biden probe. And it's specifically when it comes to these 20 shell companies, as they call them. They were actually, they were overhyped, and they gave them 3 Pinocchios. Mr. Chairman, I would like to unanimous consent to enter this into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Great. Next, so they keep focusing on these 20 companies. And then the Ways and Means Committee reveals 700 pages yesterday. It was really dramatic, right? They used Section 6103 to get these returns, and they say, hey, we're gonna show that they did something wrong. The chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Adrian Smith, who also serves on this committee or sits on this committee, when asked a simple question, they pointed out that this actually the WhatsApp message of Hunter Biden allegedly was sent in 2017 when Joe Biden wasn't even president, when Joe Biden wasn't even running for president. So unanimous consent to enter another article by Yahoo News, NBC reporter destroys GOP lawmakers' evidence against Joe Biden without even trying.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you so much. So let's dig into these 20 businesses. Oh, 20 companies. That's a lot of companies for an average American like myself. You know, I got a W-2. You know, I filed my income taxes. My wife and I have simple returns. But when it came to President Trump, how many companies did he have? Anybody want to take a guess? Ms. O'Connor, how many companies did Mr. Trump have?
I have no idea the number, but I know
Okay,
they all
stop.
did something.
I reclaim my time. Thank you. I reclaim my time. Reclaim my time. See, you can't even answer a simple question, right? He had over 500
Will the gentleman yield?
No, I will not.
Oh.
He also had over 500 companies. Over 500 companies. I looked at the tax returns. Why? Because I was on the Ways and Means Committee, and I got to actually dig into it. Over 500 companies, actually between 517 to 543 companies. And Republicans had no concern about that. When they were structured in a way, they were almost like a set of Russian nesting dolls, each one hiding the existence and who controlled the others. But did the Republicans bring it up? No. Did they have any concerns? No. But what happened last week or this week? Let's take a guess. A judge said that President Trump committed fraud, business fraud, for inflating the value of his net worth and his companies. But when it comes to the Republicans, they have no problem with that, right? They have no problem. They don't want to dig into that. When Trump controlled these 517 companies, when it came to Hunter Biden controlling 20, we see a direct line to Joe Biden. So that's what the problem is that they're cherry picking facts to connect it to Joe Biden, and when they don't have facts, they make it up, as they did earlier today when they put up tweets or text messages that were not connected. So the point is, everything they're doing is to muddy the waters. And I think it's disgraceful, because when it comes to a president that committed fraud, a president that caused an insurrection, a president that was also sold our government's national interest to the highest bidder, silence. With that, I yield back my time.
Would the gentleman yield a quick question about the president's son's 20 companies?
I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Biggs from Arizona for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to put up on the board in just a second, but this is the entire transcript of the Devin Archer testimony I submitted to the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much. So, in this particular colloquy that's going on, highlighted up there, you'll see that Mr. Archer says, let's start at the beginning. Let's go somewhere else. He says, the question is, did Hunter talk about how bringing his dad, Joe Biden, either to Ukraine or using his dad as vice president would add value in the eyes of Burisma officials? Answer, yes. How did it come up? He says, well, we were business partners. It just came up. We were business partners. We're business partners. Okay. What kind of leverage was Hunter trying to get by using his dad? Answer by Devin. I think it's more defensive, defensive leverage, that the value is there in his work. Also in this same document, I asked him, I said, the brand, he said, what is it? You keep talking about the Biden brand. I said, is it Dr. Jill? Is it Brother Jim? No. He just looks at me like I'm an idiot. He says, of course it's Joe Biden. Of course it's Joe Biden. Then you go back and you see Tony Bobulinski. What does he say? Quote, the Biden family aggressively leveraged the Biden family name to make millions of dollars from foreign entities, even though some were from communist-controlled China. And who is the Biden family asset? Is it Dr. Jill? No. Brother Jim? No. Any of the grandkids that got money from foreign companies? No. None of those folks. None of those folks. Then you get the stuff released from Ways and Means yesterday. This is Hunter Biden saying to his uncle Jim, BS, Jim, all around BS. Explain to me one thing Tony Bobulinski brings to my table that I so desperately need that I'm willing to sign over my family's brand. What's the brand? Joe Biden. And pretty much the rest of my business life. Why? Because that's the only product I got. Joe Biden, the vice president at that time. It's plain English. I'm cleaning it up a little bit. There's a lot of swear words in there. Why would I give this marginal bully the keys to my family's only asset? Oh, okay, so but we're told that there's nothing linking him. So I got to ask this question. Ms. Turley, I'm going to ask you a question. If the brand and what you're selling is Joe Biden, the then vice president, and if Joe Biden or his family is receiving some kind of benefit by the sale of access or, I'll leave it there, selling of access or even the illusion of access to Joe Biden, what does that lead you to conclude?
Well, if you look at actual cases that I've cited in my testimony, benefits to family members can be viewed as a benefit to the principal. So there's not much debate about that. The issue of the inquiry is whether there's been, let me stop say, there has been progress in the last few weeks in that many people after the Archer testimony said, yeah, I get it, it's influence peddling. Some have said it's the illusion of access, which is...
That's the new defense.
Yeah.
Is that illusion?
But I think that calling it by its correct name is important, and it is a form of corruption. The benefits to the family members can be attributed to the principal, even under the higher standard of criminal cases. So what remains is the question is, did the president know that, direct that, participate in that?
Well, we know that he made 20 calls to business associates. We know he's having dinners with those associates, which leads me to the follow-up question, which I think is critical here, because these guys are looking for the gold bars or the cash stuffed in the Menendez coat. That doesn't happen very often, in my experience, having tried a lot of cases. So my question for you is, tell us about when you have circumstantial evidence vis-a-vis direct evidence. What's its value? Can you rest a conviction on circumstantial evidence?
You can. One of the things I point out, though, in my testimony is the Supreme Court has narrowed some of the elements on things like bribery, denial of honest services. Those elements are now narrower than they were. But it is notable in the Menendez indictment that they brought the conspiracy on honest services, that they still believe that these types of gifts obviously can be based on a conspiracy theory. But you're clearly correct. I mean, if the allegations against Senator Menendez are true, that's really sort of old school bribery. Not since Jefferson and his freezer have we seen that type of raw evidence. Today, it's a lot more sophisticated. I think everyone in this room has to acknowledge that influence peddling is the favorite form of corruption in Washington. I think that's unassailable, and it's much more sophisticated than handing over gold bars or whatever is alleged in the Menendez case.
Mr. Chairman, I have a document I'd like to get in. I appreciate that my colleague trusts the American people, and the CNN poll that says the majority of Americans believe Joe Biden as vice president was involved with his son's business dealings. Submit that for the record.
Without objection, so
Mr.
ordered.
Chairman, I have another unanimous consent motion. I'd move with unanimous consent to introduce an order from the Supreme Court of the State of New York from Tuesday where the Trump Organization was found liable for fraud, and is specifically on page 28 where there's a paragraph entitled, quote, the Trump brand premium that was increased the value of Trump assets by 15 or 30% according to the Trump Organization.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Mr. Frost from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. An impeachment inquiry is a grave undertaking that is supposed to be in response to evidence of a crime. Mr. Chairman, you have questions. Many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle in this hearing have questions, but questions are not the basis for an impeachment. Evidence is. Mr. Turley, on September 1st, Speaker Kevin McCarthy said that he would not launch a fake impeachment inquiry, a sham impeachment inquiry. But then on September 12th, just 12 days later, he completely changed his mind. My question is why? In those 12 days, did hard evidence appear that clearly and directly links the President of the United States, Joe Biden, to a crime?
I can't answer as to what was it that pushed the Speaker to make the decision. The courts have said you don't have to have that vote on the floor. I think it is a best practice. But
I'm very interested in those 12 days. And we know you're not a fact witness and you're talking about things that are already public. But is there anything that came up in those 12 days that linked the President of the United States to a crime? Yes or no?
I don't have any recollection of those 12 days.
Yeah, nothing. I can tell you it's nothing. And we've heard even from you that this is why we have this impeachment inquiry. But let's be clear, this inquiry has been going on since the day we got here. Since the day I was sworn in at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night, this impeachment inquiry started. Let's pull back the curtain on what's really going on. There's no evidence of crime, only desperation and political pressure. This is what's going on. The far right called for the sham impeachment hearing with no evidence at the beginning of this year when we first got started. This impeachment inquiry has been going on. This is not the first hearing we've had in relation to this. On September 1st, the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, says, no, we're not going to do that. We don't have the evidence. We don't have the votes for it to pass on the House floor. We're not going to do it. A good decision, in my opinion. But then just 12 days later, 12 precious days later, something happens. I'm not sure what, but something happens because then the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, comes out and says, yes, we will do an impeachment inquiry. So what happened between these 12 days? It's very simple. 3 threats from members of his own caucus at the direction of former President Donald Trump changed his mind. Number one, the threat to force a vote on impeachment, which would lose on the House floor and be another embarrassment in the long list of embarrassments this Congress for the Speaker of the House. Number two, they would threat to shut down the government, something that will happen in just 2 days. And number three, and this is the one that really got to him, they said, you about to lose your job. And they said, we will remove you as Speaker from the House. And that scared him so much that Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House of the United States of Representatives, third in line of the presidency, completely caved due to the threats of people within his own caucus. This fake impeachment is based on desperate political calculation, not any evidence. And Mr. Chairman, you say this hearing is to establish the basis for this fake sham impeachment hearing, but these witnesses are not giving us any basis or giving us any evidence or giving us any solutions.
Mr. Turley
They are
testified
giving us
several times.
I reclaim my time.
I have to stop because that's not a true statement.
I reclaim my time. These witnesses are not giving any answers. They're just asking more questions. We have one witness who has a lot of questions, Ms. O'Connor. Dubinsky, one witness who knows something about accounting but has no real involvement in what's going on. And Mr. Turley stopping here on his way to his next Fox News hit. This is not a serious inquiry. And impeachment is something that's very serious. And we have to ensure that we focus on the wants and needs of the American people. This is all for nothing. Half the crowd is left. There's no line outside. The goal here to distract from the government shutdown is not going to work. And to the Speaker, I have to say, you're being played by these extremists and Donald Trump. It's costing us our economy. And this entire fake impeachment inquiry isn't about the United States. It's about Hunter Biden. And the only thing the president can be guilty of here is being a father. I yield back to the ranking member.
Chair now recognize Mr. Turner from.
I yield to the vice ranking member.
No, the gentleman from Florida yielded back. Chair.
He said he yielded back to the vice ranking member.
I yielded to the vice ranking member.
Thank you, and I'll claim some of that extra time back as well. Much of the Republican case and evidence has relied on words from Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden said this, Hunter Biden said that, therefore, case closed, there's something here. Professor Gerhardt, we know, I believe it's wide knowledge with the public, that Hunter Biden sadly was dealing with substance misuse disorder, correct?
Correct.
He's been under indictment, correct?
Correct.
Is this a reliable witness that you would deem?
Probably not.
In your assessment?
Gentleladies, time's
Thank you very much.
Chair now recognizes
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Armstrong. You
I have
seek
3
recognition.
unanimous consent motions.
Yes.
One is a hearing notice from June 10th, 2019, with an impeachment hearing with Joyce Vance, who was not a fact witness, Barbara McQuaid, who was not a fact witness, and 70s story time with John Dean. Secondly, there's another unanimous consent motion for a hearing notice in judiciary with 2 witnesses here just a week before we voted on impeachment in 2019 with Michael Gerhardt and Jonathan Turley. Appreciate you both being here very much, but you were not fact witnesses at that point in time. And the Webster's definition of hypocrisy.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes.
Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous.
Chair recognizes Ms. Mace.
Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to enter an article into the record dated January 6, 2019. A member of this own committee, the day after she was sworn in, came into Congress, and this article says, Dem split in response to her words, impeach the mother effer, the day after she was sworn in. Some might even say these kinds of comments, not only are they hypocritical by the left in their arguments today, but that this is an embarrassment to the time and people of this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman, I'm afraid my friend, the gentlelady from South Carolina, just engaged in personalities against a fellow member of the committee.
Well, what she entered in the record was, I believe it was Ms. Tlaib's.
Well, it was the commentary that accompanied it that I'm referring to.
It was an article from January 6,
what she
2018.
said.
Dem split in response to impeach the mother effer comment by a member of this committee.
Right, it was the commentary, and in any event, it doesn't make any difference.
No, she said it. She actually said it.
No, but Rule 17
She said impeach the mother effer.
The commentary of what she is presenting.
The article title is
the gentlelady's commentary.
All right, let's get on with it. I mean, the government's about to shut down, okay?
Chair, order. Chair now recognizes Mr. LaTurner from Kansas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The mischaracterization of what this hearing is about by my colleagues on the other side is astounding. Throughout the presidency of Joe Biden, the White House has attempted to claim that the president did not talk to Hunter about his business dealings. Joe Biden even said during the 2020 presidential debate that no members of his family received money from China. He said, and I quote, "My son has not made money in terms of this thing about China. Nobody else has made money from China," end quote. The White House strategy has been deny, 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 lie, and then counterattack, but the evidence and the facts have forced the White House to change its story time and time again. The White House handlers continue to shift the goalposts, and President Biden continues to lie. How can President Biden continue to maintain that Hunter's private business was simply that, private, when it's clear from bank records, emails, and testimony that Joe Biden was intimately involved in Hunter's pay-to-play schemes and crooked foreign business dealings? This image shows an email between Hunter Biden and his business associates stating the setup of equity in a Chinese-owned energy venture. This particular business deal was with CEFC, a Chinese-owned energy conglomerate. This email lays out the payment structure for equity in the company, which was known to be tied to the Chinese Communist Party through its owner, Chairman Yi Jinping. The committee's investigation into the Biden family, including evidence turned over through various document productions, has shown that these men were all in business with Hunter Biden at one time or another. James Gillier, Tony Bobulinski, and Rob Walker on separate occasions, along with other Hunter business partners, have confirmed what this email said, that they were all getting a cut. Who else was getting a cut?
What is the date of that email, sir?
This is my time.
I'm just asking the date.
This is
you're entering something into
This is my
the
time. Mr. Chairman, I ask that my time be restored.
Please restore Mr. LaTurner's time.
Thank you. Who else was getting a cut? According to this email, 10% was going to the big guy. What I'm sure my colleagues on the other side are asking themselves is, who's the big guy? Well, let me tell you. We learned in the FBI's FD 1023 that Zlochevsky called Joe Biden the big guy. Tony Bobolinsky also has corroborated that Joe Biden is the big guy. Rob Walker, an IRS whistleblower, say that Joe Biden is the big guy. And finally, the Justice Department obstructed investigators in Delaware who wanted to look into, you guessed it, the big guy. Listen, folks, it is obvious. Joe Biden is the big guy. And so what do we have here? We have the president saying that he had nothing to do with, that Hunter Biden and no one in the family profited from China. And we have evidence here that the big guy was getting 10%. Let me read you a definition of a trendy word here lately. Gaslighting. It's a form of psychological manipulation in which an abuser attempts to gain power and control over the other person by distorting reality and forcing them to question their own judgment and intuition. I would say to the American people, look at the evidence before you and make a judgment, and do not allow the White House or our colleagues on the other side of the aisle try to convince you that what you're seeing isn't the truth, trying to convince you that you're crazy. Mr. Dubinsky, you have extensive experience as an expert witness and consultant in the areas of white-collar crime, financial fraud, and corruption. Is it characteristic of these types of crimes that actors hide behind nicknames or other pseudonyms to mask their identity?
It's very common.
What about this first email image is characteristic of financial crimes that you have investigated or provided expert testimony on in the past?
Well, typically you'll see code names used and money is being paid to somebody under that code name. And that's how these processes work.
Let me ask you something. You're very experienced. When conducting an investigation, if your boss prevented you from taking investigative steps, how would you react? How would it affect your findings?
First, it would be extremely troubling if I was told not to continue to investigate something. And if I was put in that position, I'd probably withdraw from the investigation.
Has the Department of Justice ever restricted any of your investigative steps?
No, they have not.
It's amazing. Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Lee from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 hours and 45 or so minutes into this, the Republicans' own witnesses have confirmed that they have seen no evidence of any evidence. I think that if my Republican colleagues had a so-called smoking gun, they would have presented it by now and would have talked about it non-stop.
Can the gentlelady read a bank statement, an email, a text message?
Are you asking her to yield,
Reclaiming my
Mr. Chairman?
time. Thank you.
All right.
Reclaiming my time. Instead, we're sitting here with no fact witnesses and no evidence in this sham so-called impeachment to distract from their inability to fulfill their basic duty to fund and run our government. Republicans know the American people don't want their shutdown. So instead, the Republicans on this committee are attempting to divert and distract the American people's attention by spending taxpayer dollars on this sham impeachment hearing 2 days before they shut the government down in hopes that the media, and I don't just mean Fox News, will fall for their scheme and give more airtime to the lies being told on this committee today than the real life impact their shutdown will have on even their own constituents' lives. In fact, in Chairman Comer's district, Republicans' shutdown will cost 8,937 of his constituents their paychecks. In Jim Jordan's district, Republicans' shutdown will cost 3,939 of his constituents their paychecks. In Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, Republicans' shutdown will cost 6,306 of her constituents their paychecks. In Lauren Boebert's district, Republicans shut down.
Democrats are the party of shutdowns. You guys love shutdowns.
Thank you very much.
Oh.
In Lauren Boebert's district, Republicans shutdown will cost 9,016 of her constituents their paycheck. In Paul Gosar's Arizona district, Republicans shutdown will cost 12,349 of his constituents their paycheck. In Byron Donalds, 3,235 folks paycheck. In Andy Biggs, 8,433. In Lisa McClain, 7,286. In Scott Perry's Pennsylvania district and the capital of my Commonwealth, Republicans shutdown will cost 5,445 of his constituents who will lose their paycheck. Indeed, when you add it all up, Republicans' shutdown will cost 217,583 of their constituents on this committee's paychecks, their income for who knows how long. Let that sink in for a second. Those are our mothers, our fathers, caretakers, brothers, sisters, moms, dad, grandmas, grandpas, friends, neighbors, beloved community members, veterans who won't know how their food or medicine will be paid for or where their rent money is coming from. Many of them vote Republican, but I'd bet you not one of them cares more about Hunter Biden's laptop or helping Kevin McCarthy keep his gig as leader or speaker of his dysfunctional caucus than they care about receiving their paycheck and making their ends meet. And so the Republicans on this committee are betting that we'll spend this hearing engaging in partisan bickering over their favorite buzzwords rather than talking about how the MAGA shutdown will crush all of our constituents. To be honest, I don't quite care about private citizen Hunter, whom the proper authorities are dealing with, or the cable news culture war distractions. I care about the 7 million babies, children, mothers across this country who after Sunday will lose access to food and formula, over 10,000 in my district alone. I care about 300,000 families of 20,000 veterans who after Sunday could face eviction from their homes. Rare diseases and cancer patients whose experimental trials will be delayed for months. And I care about our seniors unable to get help with Social Security and Medicare. And make no mistake, their attacks are targeted, both in who's behind them and who are going to be hurt most. The most marginalized folks bear the brunt of these MAGA Republicans' attacks. Black folks, brown folks, trans folks, poor folks, disabled folks. Keeping that struggle in mind, we've had 2 hearings on the infant formula shortage on the subcommittee chaired by Congresswoman McClain. Yet with the 320,000 babies, women, and children in her home state of Michigan about to go hungry due to her party's shutdown, it seems like my Republican colleagues only care about an issue when they can point the finger in another direction, much like what's going on in this embarrassment of a hearing today. Mr. Gerhardt, in one of your recent op-eds, and you have repeated it here, you mentioned that a good test for assessing the constitutionality of a governmental action is to switch the names of the political parties and the actors involved. If the outcome is the same, it is a good sign of neutrality. If the outcome is not the same, then there's a good chance that partisanship is the driving force. I think we can safely say that this inquiry would fail that neutrality test. And since I don't have time, I think we can say that we are here, America, in this sham hearing, prioritizing the political needs of the Republican Party, pushing a lie for Donald Trump as you go hungry and you lose your homes. Shameful.
At the request of the witnesses, we're going to take a 10-minute recess.
I tell you, if there weren't chairs between us, it would be a big hug for all the good ones. Like, say again? I know. There's like 3 people. Yeah. Yeah. That's how it is. Yeah. I'm gonna go back there for a minute. All right, take a break.
Gone?
Yes, I was. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank God. Can I ask you where you found it? Did I just drop it? Oh, just right here?
I've met this man somewhere.
Yeah, I think so. They're all college students. So, Amy was like lying. I think all three of them. Why don't you come my bag?
When I leave out, I'm gonna be stepping on somebody's whatever. What am I? Huh? And what number is this? 4. Okay. Don't need to say so when you guys this chair. Oh, I know. I've been wondering the whole yeah, that's what I did. Now we can move this way. All we need is to move those 2 chairs. All right. I saw no, not at all. I love that. Oh, thank you. Yeah, we'll take advantage of it, yeah.
Eastern District of New York and Southern District of New York, U.S. Attorney, Valerie Capone, Andrew Weissman, Jack Smith, who else? James Comey, in the Southern District. So they're all very involved in Patriot Act in exploiting and specifically the uses of the Fourth Amendment. He said the Biden's had a money inside the DOJ. He said the this is according to the OIG. When was this? The report came out in 2022, September. OIG report says that he created this.
But why was you're saying
Free was the director. That's what Gal Luff said. I don't know if that's true or not. He said that there's a foreign that he's voting to I'm just telling you.
my job is
Certainly a second ago, because when Louis Freeh leaves the FBI, he becomes the general counsel of the DNA, and Hunter Biden gets added to the board. And when Senator Joe Biden passes a law making your credit card interest 28%, Louis Freeh he creates this office of general counsel. He eliminates the FBI office of legal counsel, which was established when the FBI was created and run like a JAG office. FBI agents, juris documents, cycle through every 2 years. They always have legal representation, but no one attorney can consolidate power. Caproni becomes the general counsel in 2003 to 2011. John Conyers says she's broken the law and has to be prosecuted and kicked out of the FBI, but that never happens. Chuck Grassley said the same. She leaves the FBI and she leaves the deputy general counsel for Northrop Grumman. Andrew Weissman replaces her as general counsel of the FBI. In his book, Weissman says Capone was his mentor at the FBI. 2010 or 11, right after Capone, and then Green replaces Weissman, but Jim Baker. And May 20th, when Twitter starts putting on notes on Trump's, this isn't true or whatever, Trump gets on the executive order saying you can't censor people on social media. Now, our buddy Jim Baker gets kicked out of the FBI because he's all chained up in this suspect prosecution. Okay? Well, first, he goes to Brookings Institution, where he's working for Ben Houston, their band. Do you know Peter Smith? Did you know him? He died. His death is the whole reason why the Trump impeachment failed. I'll send you the Twitter.
I believe everything. Don't believe everything. But you know.
But he says what he says. It's really
I was more disturbed how young they were.
and breathe that in with the children.
Yeah, yeah.
The House will come back to order, and we will resume the 5-minute question and answer period. The chair now
Mr.
recognizes...
Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a statement from Secretary Vilsack from September 25th stating that the WIC program, which is a federally funded program administered by the states, will expire for 7 million moms and children if the government shuts down.
Without objection, so ordered. The chair now recognizes Mr. Fallon from Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Words mean things, or at least they should. Here's Joe Biden's words from August 28, 2019. First of all, I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything to do with their business. From September of the same year, I have never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. October, same year, quote, I don't discuss business with my son. Were Joe Biden's words true? No, they were false. So why did he lie repeatedly? In an interview back in 2019 with The New Yorker, even Hunter admitted that he talked to his dad about business, specifically Burisma. Many of Hunter Biden's business associates have testified Joe Biden met with them. Two of the ones closest to Hunter, Rob Walker and Devin Archer, were among them. So they not only spoke to him, they took, a lot of the business associates took photos with him. They played golf with him. Joe Biden gave them White House tours. He wrote letters of recommendation for their children and shared fancy dinners as well. So let's also talk about patterns. Yuri Luzkov and Yelena Baturina. They are Russian, they were married, Russian oligarch billionaires. Michael McFaul, the U.S. ambassador to Russia, ID'd Luzkov as being corrupt. Yelena Baturina wires $3.5 million to Hunter Biden. Soon thereafter, who does she have dinner with? Then Vice President Joe Biden. Kenez Rakishev, and Karim Mazimov, Kazakhstani nationals. Mazimov used to be the prime minister. He's now in prison. Rakishev wires $142,300 to Hunter Biden. The very next day, Hunter Biden buys a Porsche for $142,300. And then soon after, who do you think Kenez Rakishev has dinner with? Say it with me. Then Vice President Joe Biden. Vadim Pizarski and Mykola Zolochevsky, the CEO and CFO of Burisma. The U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, calls Zolochevsky a poster child of corruption. Those two fellas paid Hunter Biden's shell companies a total of $3.3 million. And who do you think Vadym Pozharskyi had dinner with? Again, say it with me all at once. Then Vice President Joe Biden. So here's a pattern. You have crooked foreigners that deliver pallets of cash to the Bidens, and then they have dinner with Joe. And apparently Joe Biden is one hell of an expensive dinner date. And if that's not selling political access, I don't know what is. My Democratic colleagues report ad nauseum when they talk to the media that there's no direct evidence linking Joe Biden to his son's crimes. Really? This is a FD 1023, which is used by the FBI when confidential informants give them information. This 1023 is only as good as the source. It could be garbage or it could be gold. The FBI describes this source as somebody that is highly reliable and very trustworthy. In fact, they've worked with him for over a decade and paid him well over $100,000. What he has given to them is always checked out. This, ladies and gentlemen, is gold. Consider this with weight and gravity. So what does this say? I don't know what the confidential informant's name is, so I'm going to call him Ivan. Ivan is not his real name, but Ivan describes Vadym Pozharskyi directly admitting to him in a confidential conversation that they hired a not-so-smart
are complicit in undermining free and fair elections in Bangladesh. And as we made clear when we announced this policy on May 24th, that's when we announced the policy, not the imposition of sanctions on specific individuals. But when we announced that policy, that it could be applied to any Bangladeshi individual who we believed was responsible for or complicit in undermining the